Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. If you're not getting your political news from AMAC, then you won't be informed about American politics. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And to all of our AMACers out there listening, thank you for tuning in today. We've got with us a great guest. Her name is Jeanne Mancini. Jeanne is the president of the March for Life and leader of the March for Life Education and Defense Fund. Now, many of you know March for Life is an organization that promotes the beauty and dignity of every human life, and they have done this most notably through their annual March for Life event in Washington, D.C., and that is held on the anniversary of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision. Now, Jeanne's tenacity and dedication to life and families is greatly appreciated by us here at AMAC. Jeanne, it is such a pleasure to have you here with me. Thank you so much for joining Better for America.
Oh, thanks so much, Rebecca. It's truly an honor to be with you, so thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Our over 2 million AMAC members, they care deeply about protecting life, and I want to jump right in and talk about the rise of a covert international network that is aimed to deliver hundreds of thousands of abortion pills to pregnant women. Now, the Washington Post recently wrote a disturbing article about this covert abortion pill network and how it's really fanatically successful. I had such a hard time, Jeanne, just getting through the article. It really turned my stomach, brought tears to my eyes. This is an emerging network in the business of medical or medication abortion, and they paint themselves as heroes, when in reality, what they're really doing, in my view, is taking advantage of frightened young women. Now, why is it that abortion advocates say that they want women to have all of their options, but they only offer them one, and that is abortion, the termination of life? This network of people could spend their time doing other things like finding families to care for children postpartum, but they choose to push the notion that abortion is the best option, and they are essentially glamorizing this drug smuggling operation under the guise of reproductive care. My question for you, Jeanne, is this process as harmless as they make it to seem, and is it even legal?
It's absolutely not harmless. So let me just give a little bit of background here on what it is that this underground group of people are doing. They are providing chemical abortion, which is a 2-drug regimen, mifepristone and misoprostol. Mifepristone, when it was approved back in the year 2000, was only approved with what's called a black box warning from the Food and Drug Administration, and doctors could only administer this within like a 20-mile radius of a hospital, because this drug is known for having side effects of hemorrhaging and it impedes the immune system as well. So what this group is actually doing is dangerous in a lot of different ways. So on one hand, they're administering these drugs that originally even had a black box warning on them that we know have more adverse event reports, according to the FDA, than surgical abortion. And what they're not doing is the necessary ultrasound prior to giving a woman this regimen, which isn't very good for her to begin with. Of course, it's not good for the baby. But having an ultrasound prior to an abortion, which of course we work for the day when abortion is unthinkable, when that's not happening. But if we're going to work for women's health, having an ultrasound prior to abortion is necessary to rule out what can be called an ectopic pregnancy when a baby attaches to the fallopian tube very early in development. So for so many reasons, this is bad for women's health, and it's really horrifying that abortion advocates sometimes claim that they're trying to advance women's health, but are willing to lower the bar on oversight for things like this that can actually really hurt women. And as for the question, is it legal? It remains to be seen right now. The FDA surprisingly over the weekend came out and were very much against this, in part because I think they know how bad this is for women's health. So we'll see if there's any teeth to what the FDA put out over the weekend in terms of this policy on administering chemical abortion. But by and large, I just want to say this as well. Chemical abortion, while abortion advocates make it sound like it's almost like taking an aspirin, for a headache or getting a wart removed or something very simple, it's actually much harder on women's health than surgical abortion. You don't have to look too far to figure that out. There was a great study out of Finland, a sad study that showed that chemical abortion results in 7 times more complications than surgical abortion does. And so while this is kind of the new mantra, sadly, of abortion advocates, it is terrible for women's health. And I don't mean to be fear-mongering, because I'm not that kind of a person. I'm not sensationalistic here, but this is not good, and it's not going to bear good fruit.
It certainly isn't. And what we see happening in California is really blowing my mind. We see that Governor Gavin Newsom, he signed 13 new abortion and reproductive health bills into law, strengthening California's already robust allowances for abortion. And he's promoting these heinous, vile laws by placing billboards in pro-life states in an effort to encourage interstate abortion travel. Now, adding insult to injury, he's engaging in blasphemy because he's desecrating a Bible verse, Mark 12:31, which says, "Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no greater commandment than these." But he is placing that verse on a pro-death, pro-abortion billboard in pro-life states to promote interstate abortion travel. I just, this blows my mind. Now, these signed laws would remove all civil and criminal penalties for the deaths of newborn babies. It would allow trained nurse practitioners to perform first trimester abortions without supervision of a physician. It would prohibit a coroner from holding an inquest after a fetal death, including cases where drugs are suspected as causing a stillbirth. What should our next steps be to continue really marching into this post-Roe America, and how do we deal with states like California?
Well, Rebecca, thank you. I too was just so surprised at the audacity of Governor Newsom in California, and that particular ad where he's quoting scripture. Nationally, we need to call on our elected officials to pass something called Sienna, the Child Interstate Abortion Notification Act, and that would prohibit such things as women and people under the age of 21, especially going across states to get an abortion, such as this.
You know, if one rogue state isn't bad enough, the Biden administration continues to push for abortion to be deemed a fundamental right, and he's doing this on the national platform. I want you to go ahead and listen to a clip of President Joe Biden.
The promise I make to you and the American people. The first bill that I will send to the Congress will be to codify Roe v. Wade.
This is the same thing that he said back in 2020. He's simply pandering to the false ideas of feminism, in my view. How can we convince our youngest generations the value of life in the womb, especially in the face of America's leadership that's heralding abortion as our fundamental right?
Oh, I love your question, Rebecca. So for starters, I think that we've seen the abortion rate and also public opinion on abortions shift very much in the direction of life over a long time span. So if we look back to the early 1990s, this is when most Americans self-identified as being pro-choice. It's when the highest number of abortions were happening. But when we look at today, what we're seeing is that the abortion rate has, thanks be to God, gone down quite a bit, and that more and more Americans are self-identifying as being pro-life. In fact, it's about a 50-50 breakdown. So what can we do to help young people see the truth? I think we continue to do what we have been doing in some ways, which is showing them ultrasonography, right? Like our advances in science and technology, I think, are largely one of the reasons that people have become more pro-life. We can't say that a developing baby at 6 weeks or 10 weeks is a lifeless blob of tissue, because we have the technology that shows that just isn't the case. It's a little human being with all of their DNA. The other thing is, of course, I represent the March for Life, and we have marches, and anyone who's been to the national march or one of our state marches knows that the large majority of marchers are young people. They are young people, and they're so positive. So I'd say a good 80% of the marchers in our, hundreds of thousands that come every January are under the age of 30, and they make these creative signs. and they're so diverse, in terms of their background. But we need to continue to speak to them. But I would have to say that their generation knows that abortion is the single human rights abuse of today. Just anecdotally, really quickly, their wonderful story goes back about 6 or 7 years, where NARAL Pro-Choice America's head, then Nancy Keenan, came out for lunch meeting in Washington, D.C., and it was the day of the March for Life. And she saw all of the young people there with their T-shirts, with their enthusiastic and very positive attitudes. And she decided, because of that experience of seeing all of the young people, that she would step down from her job. Not because she was convinced, unfortunately, of our issue, but she thought that they needed to market to young people better. And what I would say is that young people, they see through the bunk. And it's not so much that their marketing plan is flawed as their product is flawed on the other side. But I think we're doing well right now with our young people, but we need to do better, especially in a lot of misinformation and the overturn of Roe and the Dobbs decision from the Supreme Court. But I lean very much on science and technology. And then lastly, women's experience. We always have at the March for Life women who share their experience either of choosing life in a very difficult scenario and how that was hard but empowering and beautiful, or the opposite of having chosen abortion and having regretted that. And of course, I'm sure that some of your listeners may have been involved in an abortion, and there's always hope and healing. But I have to believe that part of why we're moving in the direction of life as a country is because women's shared experiences haven't been positive. And one of the biggest lies that we need to counter is that abortion is good for women, that a right to abortion is good for women. Couldn't be further from the truth.
Jeannie, I want to ask for you to share with our listeners any resources, websites that you might be able to point them to. And then finally, what is the hope that you have in your heart for our future that will honor, generations to come will honor the sanctity of life?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for all that you all are doing at AMAC. We're just so very grateful. And please do check us out at marchforlife.org. We have a C3 and a C4, and we're involved day in and day out in this battle. I mean, because it really, frankly, is a battle. My hope is that we make abortion unthinkable in this country, and I think we will. So we're playing the long game here, right? If we take a look at some human rights issues and even some Supreme Court decisions, we know that Plessy v. Ferguson, which made segregation constitutional in the late 1980s, took 58 years to get overturned in Brown v. Board of Education. So that was 58 years to correct a wrong Supreme Court decision on a human rights issue. And even just a few years later with Loving v. Virginia, which made constitutional interracial marriage, like it's so hard for us to even consider that would be something in the mid-1900s or even later half of that, that would be considered by the Supreme Court. But it was only in, I want to say it was in the late 60s that decision came down from the Supreme Court. So listen, it takes a long time to impact cultural change. And by the way, when Loving v. Virginia came down, only 4% of Americans were favorable towards that decision. And so I say this because we have our work cut out ahead of us in changing hearts and minds, but it took only 50 years to get Roe overturned. And we now have lost 63 million Americans to abortion. And so that's something we really need to consider as we're working towards this day when abortion is unthinkable. We're in the next phase. It's a very different phase of work where strengthening the safety net like maternity homes and pregnancy care centers is all the more critical. But we're there. We are there in that next phase, and we're grateful for the overturn of Roe, and we will do this in the right time.
Jeanne Mancini, what a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much. You're courageous, and your passion in defending innocent life is so appreciated greatly. Thank you for your wonderful leadership and for all that you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you, Rebecca. It's just such an honor to be with you.
Same here, Jeannie. We'd love to have you back again with us. And to all of you out there listening, thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can listen to more just like it. Head to our YouTube channel or visit us at bfapodcast.us. You can also listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, or by downloading our free AMAC news app. And don't forget to follow us wherever you are on social media. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.